Well, welcome to Inspired to Build. This is our last Inspired to Build live stream of the year, and I've got Charles here, which is super exciting for me because I know Charles in real life and I met him in real life before, which it's not true for everyone who's been on this live stream before, so that's really, really exciting. If you are joining us here live, feel free to drop a comment. We are live on multiple platforms. And feel free to drop a comment and say hi and tell us where you are joining from. I'm Erica, and I am here on the east coast of the US, just outside of Atlanta. So it's just lunchtime for me. I don't have my lunch, but I do have my coffee. So yeah, Charles, tell us a little bit about you are in the world and where you're from, and say hi.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Roger from Montreal, so Quebec, the province of Quebec in Canada, but currently right outside New York City in Montclair, New Jersey, so also on EST.
Yeah, at least we're in the same time zone. I'm happy that you are here at lunchtime. Oh, look, you got your cup as well. I don't know if you got tea or coffee or just water in there.
Yeah.
Coffee, you're a coffee drinker. Love it. Love the coffee drinking. I love coffee. My husband's into tea, but I like the coffee. So for anyone joining us live, yeah, please drop in and say hi in the comments. I love when people say hi in the comments. Really lovely to see you joining us live. As I said, we are live on multiple platforms, but the comments will be joined up. So today we have Charles here, and we're going to talk about AI and building AI solutions and what it's like being an AI builder in today's era. So we'll talk a little bit about who Charles is and look a bit more into what it really takes to build AI-powered features and where we look at where the space is heading. If you've joined some of the other Inspired to Build sessions, we've had some really interesting conversations around this, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. But yeah, first of all, Charles, I know a bit about you, but obviously people who are joining us know less about you than I do. And yeah, hi Aman, hi Baltino, hi Tudor. Lovely to have you joining us live.
Yeah, so for sure, you want me to give a quick intro?
Yes, please.
Of course.
I mean, we met in San Francisco the first time, so yeah.
Yeah, so I came to the US at 17 originally for hockey, actually. So very
Hockey?
French Canadian thing of me to be playing hockey. And it sounds counterintuitive because people are like, well, you're Canadian, you came to the US for hockey. How does that work? It's a whole long story that is not for this podcast, but the short story is the US does like school and hockey like pretty well, better in some respects than back home. So anyways, it just made sense for me to come and do that. So I came at 17 and I decided to stick around for college. I studied software engineering and math in upstate New York at Clarkson. So I see Beltino on the live chat. We actually know each other from Clarkson. So Beltino, nice to see you. So yeah, I did that, and then I started my career at BlackRock in San Francisco. So I spent 3 years there. That's as you said, that's where we met. I rotated across multiple engineering teams there, mostly on the back end, building the Aladdin system, which is BlackRock's proprietary asset management software. And then
unfortunately, you did not come and work on my team.
I know, yeah.
And very unfortunate. For those who don't know, on the live stream, I used to obviously work at BlackRock as well, and that's where I crossed paths with Charles. And I would have liked Charles to have worked on my team, but he had bigger things waiting for him. So yeah.
I feel like at that point I guess the highlight I'd say of the rotational program, which the first 2 years was probably the quant development work that we did for the Alpha Generation group. That was like what I was most interested in joining, like that rotational program. I did that for like about a year after the rotational program to cap off my 3 years in SF, and then I moved to New York City, did another 3-year stint there, also with BlackRock, finished up my master's in ML, and kind of started building multi-agent systems for different applications within BlackRock still for Aladdin. And then, started building stuff, I guess, on the side in like what they call the 5 to 9 after the 9 to 5. And eventually that side building turned into something that I could go on full time and kind of leave BlackRock and go do full time. So that's GhostEye.
And looking a little bit at our shared background of BlackRock there for a moment, I have found that some of those foundational things that I learned from the fintech space actually has served me incredibly well looking at AI, because I maybe looked at some of the portfolio analysis pieces and the API and the gateway space and the networking of handling those types of requests. I didn't do the fancy portfolio analysis pieces. However, I do come to appreciate the challenges that came with analyzing portfolios and doing some of the very complex financial maths that came into that. Do you feel that having been in that space actually laid a good foundation for you to get into machine learning and to AI as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, it was a blend of things. I had a similar kind of feel with being on the quant development side, because we're working closely with quant researchers, and they were the ones actually coming up with the novel signals and models that we would then productionalize into code. And it kind of felt like I was very interested in how quant research was being developed and how they came up with these new models and signals. But I never get to really be on that side of the fence where I would be the one like doing the research, obviously lacking some foundational research skill there and like background on the quant finance side of things. But I definitely feel like that kind of, it was a similar relationship to your point of like kind of being there and being interested in it, but not really being fully immersed in it. And then I guess similarly that evolved into the AI side of things. Obviously we were inspired a lot by like existing AI teams within the firm as well. So think of like the BlackRock AI labs, we were seeing some really cool stuff in there. So I guess it was trying to find ways for us to bring AI into like our workflows. And then obviously when Gen AI hit mainstream and it was on everyone's, it was top of mind for everyone, that kind of changed the game, because then it was like a lot easier to justify basically to kind of do this cool stuff and kind of trying to bring it in. So
yeah. And I guess another interesting piece, by the way, I'm happy to talk about hockey at any point as well. We can have another live stream about hockey. I'm Swedish, so happy to share
Olympics
any hockey
too, so there's going to be some
I mean, we can obviously talk about whether Sweden or Canada is better at hockey. That's another conversation for another day. However, obviously we can end it with the Sweden is better, but no. By the way, it's always very stressful to watch a Sweden-Canada match. But however, back to technology. So if we look at what you're doing today, though, you are not doing finance and AI. So GhostEye is not about finance.
Not at all.
No. And well, I say no as if I know everything, but I don't know everything what GhostEye is. So could you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to take this leap and what inspired you and your co-founder to create GhostEye? Because it is inspired to build. So where does the inspiration come from? Like, what motivates you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start off. I'll try to take like some steps back to really get to the origin of the story here. For me, just personally, like one thing I've kind of tried doing for most of my life is trying to default to hard things and default always having like a side kind of hustle, if you will. I don't know if it's the perfect word to kind of describe it. Perfect might be a bit of a misnomer, but always kind of doing something in your free time that is either sharpening your skills or learning something new or whatever, right? So that's kind of how, for me, when I was working at BlackRock, I started the master's in ML that I did part-time. I was like working because I felt like, after the 9 to 5, I had a little bit more free time. My partner, who's in med school, was also extremely busy all the time. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be here and not be able to hang out with her because she's like studying all the time, might as well do something on my own and like kind of like learn, right? So that's kind of how the whole me taking this master's in ML started. And when I graduated, I was kind of I felt like I was at a crossroads, like career-wise, because at that point I had been at BlackRock for 5 years. I was like, I feel like that's a pretty good early career stint in like one big corporation. So I was kind of starting to look at what my different options were. I was thinking about maybe doing a PhD and going more about the research.
Oh, wow.
So that's something I considered as well. And then there's the field of cybersecurity that just kind of was always on a back burner, like in the back of my head. I was like, I feel like that's something that is really interesting that I know absolutely nothing about, that I would be really outside my comfort zone getting to to start learning about, and that was just fascinating to me. And I felt like there's a lot of, obviously being a software engineer, there's a ton of, we have to think about security, and it's ingrained in like, just what we do, build and stuff. And then even more so with like the ML background, now that I got the first master's, I was like, I feel like there's something there. There's a confluence of things that could be like really interesting. So anyways, all this to say that after I finished my master's, I was like, maybe the next path for me is going to do another master's in cybersecurity this time, and learn about the field and like see, are there synergies there? Can I do something cool? Maybe it's a bit of a bifurcation in like my career path. I didn't know yet at the time, right? So all this to say that I started asking around the InfoSec department internally at BlackRock in the New York City office. And what I would ask him is basically just get a coffee chat with them and be like, hey, here's what I did so far. Here's my background. I'm thinking about doing this master's. Am I wasting my time, or like, is this a good path for me? Should I go do this, right? Is it going to be a good use of my time? And then I got to chat with a bunch of different people. One coffee chat led to another, and that's how I met my co-founder, Ishan. And with him, we started talking and kind of realized that there's a lot of things that we saw eye to eye. We shared like a similar ambition about being entrepreneurial and like starting our own thing. And basically his message was like, don't go do the masters, like just come build stuff with me. And at first I was like, cool, like great advice, but I don't really know who this Ishan person is yet. It was kind of, we had just met each other, right? But then, over time we started, sitting down together more and more, talking about ideas. And a couple of weeks later, he actually reached back out to me. He was like, hey, I actually have this idea now. Let's like start, going and build it together. So basically that's how GhostEye started. And then this is good. This is okay if it's like a long-winded like story about the
love stories.
Great. Okay.
But also like I am curious about the timeline here, like how long you were like sort of dating, if you will.
It is. That's a whole nother topic, but like a co-founder relationship is like literally a marriage. We can talk about that like later, but a lot of people will say that, and it's been proven true so far. So that was last summer, basically. So not this past summer, the summer before. So summer of 2024 is when I kind of finished the ML masters, and then a few months later, I met Ishan, and then a couple weeks later, we started building stuff together. The original idea that we had, though, was not in what GhostEye is doing right now. It was in the space. Yeah. So GRC stands for Governance, Risk, and Compliance, and our company was called GRC Fast. Amazing name. Very, very simple name.
Got a catchy name now.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of explains the whole thing, right? We're trying to do GRC, but faster. So like GRC Fast, right? Basically, GRC Fast stemmed from pain points that Ish and I both saw on both our teams. So he was the red team lead at BlackRock globally. I was on an AI team building multi-agent systems for Aladdin. And we both tried to onboard a third-party vendor for a tool that we wanted to use in our day-to-day workflow. And both of this whole onboarding process took about 8 to 12 months, respectively. So we were like, okay, clearly there's like something there. There's inefficiencies. Like, why is it taking so long to verify that there's like a third party that has certain risks that we need to mitigate and make sure that we have all our bases covered? So we started like building some kind of tool that would like leverage AI, obviously, and like AI agents to streamline the third-party risk assessment process that's part of onboarding a third-party vendor. And we started building that. It was pretty interesting, very cool to build, obviously cool technological challenge, but also not very complicated in a sense, because a lot of like that third-party risk piece is very much compliance driven, and a lot of people treat it as like a compliance checkbox. I'm not saying that's how it should be treated. I'm sure people take some, organizations or companies take it very seriously and do a lot of due diligence and whatnot. But for the most part, like it's compliance checkbox.
Sort of cover your back exercise.
Yeah, and like if you think of like where agentic systems are now, like the task is not that hard. Like you think of PDF document parsing, cross verifying certain things. Like it's not a super hard problem to solve, right? And so that's kind of what we started realizing over time as we're building this. So we would like go to work, and then once we're done with work, switch to our personal laptops, continue building this thing after hours. And then we got to, I want to say maybe February or March, like this past February or March, so almost like a year from now. And we're nearing like an MVP product. There was some early kind of design partners, customers that were interested in like experimenting with the tool. And then we kind of got cold feet. Honestly, we realized like Ishan is like a global red team, like very unique talent, right? And he was doing really, really cool stuff at BlackRock in terms of what red teamers do, and that tool that we're building was not like using his skill set at all. Like we were, it felt like we were like wasting his skill set away, basically, because it wasn't like.
Do you want to explain for a second what red team mean here? Because
Great call. Yeah, so red team, think of enterprise security as having a blue team and a red team. It's not, depending on the size of the company, that'll differ, and some companies don't even have like a full-blown security team. Some don't have a dedicated red or blue team. They just have a security team. But think of blue team as like the defensive side of things. So they're trying to defend against attacks, against attackers, making sure that all their EDRs are in check, that we're sifting through alerts correctly, and we're flagging stuff before it becomes an issue. And then think of the red team as like the purely offensive side of things. So like emulating what attackers would do and basically attacking enterprises and software systems, right? And then there's, security teams are not just blue team, red team. There's a whole bunch of other teams. Like there's a whole SOC analysts, security researchers. There's a bunch of other roles there. But like at a high level, that's kind of what red team, blue team is. So red team, very offensive, security-minded people, right?
And then this sort of start evolving later for what GhostEye becomes, I take it?
Yeah, sort of. So we basically, like I was saying, like we realized, okay, Ishan, we're not using his skill set. It's a waste. It's like what we call like a founder market fit. Is like, is it a good fit for this founder to be in this market? Being in the security market, obviously that was obvious, but like being in the GRC security market, not necessarily. Yeah. So we kind of just scrapped basically the whole project, and we started from scratch, and it was fine because we did spend like a good like 6-ish months like building that.
Okay, so you had decided that you were together. You had like dated each other, if we called it that.
Yeah.
You had figured out that you wanted to be together.
Yeah.
And now you were trying to figure out what was the right thing for you guys to build together.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's where you were at that point. And where were you? What was the month, year at this point? So you passed February?
Yeah, at this point it must have been like March or April, I want to say, when we like hard pivoted to GhostEye. And it was really just kind of re-centralizing around what Ishan is really good at as a red team practitioner, right? And we were trying to be building a product where our skill sets were very complementary, right? Where it would kind of mesh together well, and we would be able to learn from each other and like just build something that, I was lacking the skill on the security side, and like Ishan would lack the skill on the AI side, and it would be like a very good complementary match. And that's kind of how we came up with GhostEye. Basically, we kind of just told ourselves like Ishan is a global talent at red teaming. Red teamers act like adversaries and attack systems and try to breach enterprises before the real bad guys like actually do it. So let's build a product that simulates that. And then we were like, well, how do enterprises get breached? Usually to begin with, it's usually through humans. So a lot of breaches actually happen through social engineering first, where an attacker will get access to either credentials or foothold in a system or network, and then progress the breach from there and try to do as much damage or achieve their main objectives, which is why this whole human attack surface kind of like idea started kind of fomenting in our head, if you will. That's kind of how we came about the idea and like started building GhostEye.
Also, I want to call out, by the way, in the chat, like Tudor, love you asking questions. We'll get there. And also, if anyone else has questions for Charles, please drop them in the comments. If you're watching whether you're watching on LinkedIn or a different platform, we'll get all of their comments consolidated here on StreamYard. So don't worry whichever platform you're watching on. So I have a question here, Charles. So you all got to this, you got your vision together of what GhostEye was going to be. And it really reminds me of when I studied many, many years ago now at university. And I took a class, as we did, computer science in information security, and they touched on the social, engineering part of information security. And my lecturer, he had done research on this part, and he was talking about one of the researches he had done back then. And back then, the research he had done wasn't so much you downloaded, say, software off the internet. At that point, you got the software on a CD and you installed it, right?
Yeah.
But he talked about this in his research, but he had literally created a letter which looked very official from the software provider, and sent out this CD, right, with malicious software on it. And literally that was all he did, right? And then because the internet still existed, so all this software did, even though it was malicious, it didn't actually do anything malicious. All it did was it would send him effectively information that it was installed, and it had the letter would say, "Hi, this is an update. It is critical. You need to install it now. Thank you so much," from software company you are using.
Yeah.
And that's a very simple, like sort of social engineered attack, right? Because you are giving someone a piece of software to install.
Yeah. Actually, and like that's like a good, very great example that is like a bit more analog, obviously, like with the physical like CD, but that's a great example of like how social engineering attacks like begin. So it's actually scary, like the amount of attack vectors that are out there that real attackers can leverage. So we can dive into more specifics there.
But I had never thought about that. Obviously it was when I was at university, but I had never, that was not what I was expecting when I walked into that class, that we were going to talk about the sort of psychology of, information security and attacks. I thought we were going to talk about like cryptography, right?
Yeah. That's also, like I said, I knew nothing about security basically before like meeting Ishan, and that's one thing that kind of struck me as well, is like I didn't realize there's such a big human psychology element to breaches and how breaches attack. Like usually when people think about security and securing systems, it's all like at the network level, at the system level, like AppSec, firewalls, networking, etc. But people rarely think about a very vulnerable entry point, which is just employees that work at the company. So
So then obviously you have mentioned AI and Gen AI and ML, and how I have to ask how that then, if you can share whatever you can share. Obviously you are building a company, so what can you share about how GhostEye actually leverages that, and how does that fit into the product strategy of GhostEye to help combat this social human psychology attack vector?
Yeah, great question. So I guess to cap off, the last point on the origin story is like we realized, okay, this is the right space for us. Whatever Ishan is able to do as a red teamer, meaning also carry out social engineering attacks, that was part of like his duties. Whatever he can do, I'm going to try to automate it and scale it with AI. Right?
Okay, so basically you scaled Ishan.
Yeah, basically, like we literally, when we sat down, we're like, okay, you tell me as a red teamer like everything that you do, and I'm going to try to take that in and we call it agentify it, which is not the right word. Probably agentify it is probably the closest we come to it. We'll agentify it and like kind of scale it up and hopefully be able to emulate like what real attackers do and what you would do as like a red teamer. Right? So that's kind of how our two skill sets are complementary, and what the philosophy is like behind the product. Now, when it comes to like actual social engineering attacks, to your question, part of it is monitoring people's online presence and digital footprint for specific entry points. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. Let's say you, Erica, are going to the RSA conference in San Francisco in March, right? And you're someone that's very active on social media, on LinkedIn, for example, and you're posting about it like a couple of weeks before, saying, hey, I'm excited to be attending RSA conference in San Francisco, and my followers that are going to be there, I'll be there. Let's like try and meet up, whatever, right? Let's say you make a post about this on LinkedIn. One of our agent that is monitoring you as an employee of Tetrate picks this up and see, okay, Erica is someone that is about to attend RSA. That's a timely event that's happening in 2 weeks. That's like an attack angle for a real attacker, right? Someone that could be in your network or could have access to posts that are public, depending on what your privacy settings are and whatnot.
Yeah.
Use that information and like craft a pretty believable social engineering scenario and try to leverage that to make you do actions that you wouldn't want to do. And what that would look like is they could maybe send you a week before the conference, be like, hey, Erica, your ticket got canceled. And it's an email that looks exactly like the branding from the RSA conference, so you think it's legit. And then the whole goal is to try to have emotional triggers in the people that we target, right? So emotional trigger in this scenario is like you wanting to be at the conference, and if your ticket's canceled, obviously, then
you have your flight and your hotel, everything.
You have logistics behind it, etc. So it's gonna kind of, I guess, spark a feeling of urgency on your end, like trying to figure out what the issue is and like trying to resolve this, right? And then it would be, a phishing link or a malicious QR code or like a malicious attachment, like you were saying, the CD, like I guess a more modern version of that, like a malicious PDF saying like, hey, go change this information to restore your ticket, basically, right?
Yeah.
That's like one of the angles of our product is we have agents that kind of go in and gather what we call open source intelligence. That's like another like security term. Basically what this means is it's just like any publicly available information is fair game to be leveraged against you, right? Because even being an attacker would like do the same thing. Right? So we have agents going out and like trying to gather open source intelligence about individuals that work at specific companies, and then whatever information we're able to get there, you leverage that to create realistic social engineering scenarios to emulate what a real attacker would do, basically.
So you are effectively attacking companies.
Yeah, basically. And obviously with consent, it's like an enterprise SaaS, right? Our product.
Yeah.
So like there's an operator, either we do it for the firm, like a more of like a managed offering, or there's an operator that's part of the security team or that's responsible for this that would go and basically click a few buttons on the platform. The OSINT gathering process would start, and then feed that into like the scenario generation, deploy these scenarios and like campaigns, and then monitor how people react to certain attack vectors and attacks, right?
And if you click a thing, do you get that little cute thing that says you've been phished?
No, so we actually go as far as capturing credentials and like capturing sessions.
Okay.
Like the whole, and this kind of brings us into the broader vision for GhostEye, and like the next round of modules that we're trying to build is we don't want to cover the social engineering aspect only. We want to cover the complete attack chain. And what that would look like is like what a real adversary would do again is like breach a human, hack a human, get access to some information that would allow them to progress that further. And based on what they're able to get from a social engineering attack, just basically go on and like attack systems and networks and then like achieve their objectives, right? So for us, like we don't want to stop at like the, hey, you've been phished and like here's this training. We obviously have a piece of our platform that will be training heavy and we'll be delivering personalized training to individual users with enterprise.
Because I'm sure like the people who buy your services, if they identify people who need training inside of their companies, I'm sure they want to send their employees on training.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. So they would do that, and we have part of our platform also does that as well. But the broader goal is like once we're able to compromise a human within an enterprise, whatever information we got from there, how can we leverage that to progress the breach even further and simulate the rest of the attack chain that like a real attacker would do? So that's the reason why we don't just tell people like, hey, you've been phished when they click the link. We will tell their manager like, hey, one of your employees failed this assessment, and here's where they failed, and here's a training that's going to be delivered, and here's when they should do it, and etc. And that whole process will be kicked off as soon as someone clicks the link. But we're not going to tell the person right away because they could be part of a broader, more complex social engineering attack that like our users are doing like with the platform. Or we could even say like, hey, we don't want to tip them off that like they were actually part of this social engineering campaign, and because we might want to do other things in the future with it, right? So
you're trying to understand the bigger risk for the company and helping the company understand what risks they are exposed to. I've been watching too many police dramas lately, by the way, Charles. So I'm just thinking about those right now, how they are like trying to map out all of the things and how there are different levels of security clearance and who knows what. And I was just imagining the manager and then the people who work with you who have like hired you to map out the weak points. So I was like thinking of you as some special ops team gathering intelligence. Been watching too many police dramas lately, but for those who are into Scandinavian, crime and noir stuff, this you can really map this in. I'm now imagining Charles in a little room somewhere talking to someone, like, this is our intelligence we've gathered, what would you like to do next? These are our options.
I mean, it's kind of like that, honestly, and like it feels I felt like the same way before being in that world. It's like it feels science fiction-y, like to a certain extent. But then the more you dive into it, the more you realize like, okay, some of these ops are like actually like kind of like the movies, you know, like kind of like the books or whatever. It's like it's pretty crazy. And obviously, you know, the email example I gave is like one attack vector, but that's like the scary part now is that it's so much easier for attackers to like leverage a bunch of different attack vectors. Think of like voice phishing, like the phishing
side. Like the AI phone calls that people can do now.
SMS phishing too, like what they call smishing, and not just SMS, but like, you know, Blue, iMessage, text bubbles, Telegram, Signal, WhatsApp, like all the different, you know, messaging platforms are now fair game for attackers to use as attack vectors. And it's gone with Gen AI, it's gone like so much easier and so much cheaper for them to carry out like pretty complex social engineering attacks. So yeah.
Let's have a little look at Tudor's question, because I sort of have a side question to that, so we can like just look at that, a bit of a bigger question around here. So I have a bigger question. So since you are dealing potentially with some potentially confidential information, but you say that all the information, if you were like profiling Erica, you're only using public information that Erica clearly has spread out into the world. But my question was, Erica may then provide you some very secret information, because what if, well, maybe not Erica, I'm going to say that I'm a very responsible person, but maybe, what if I'm not? But some employees may then provide some information they shouldn't. How do you? We had some other people here on the live stream before, and we talked a lot about model selection, obviously different providers where you can get different levels of data retention and security. We've talked about on this live stream that you can get zero data retention options and so forth. Is that things that you stress about or worry about? Is that like things that run through your mind? I just was curious, is that stuff that you worry about? Or and then the question that Tudor had then, do you have like, you train your own models? Do you use open source or proprietary models? If there's anything in this space you can share. Charles, again, I do understand that you're building your own product and it's obviously a proprietary product that you're building. So I'm not want you to share all your secret sauce, but I'm sure there are people building their own solutions who are very curious to learn any lessons that you have learned along the way.
Yeah, so I'll take your first one on the data policy thing. That's definitely something that's top of mind for us. We obviously have enterprise customers right now where, you know, they have security questionnaires and we have to answer all these questions and make sure that the data is well safeguarded and it's not fed into models that could then leverage like personal PI information about the specific people we're targeting on campaigns, etc. So right now I'll kind of take the Tudor's question at the same time, because I think they're very much related. We don't pre-train models right now. We will eventually post-train models and it'll become proprietary models that'll be our own, but we're not at that stage yet. So right now it's mostly leveraging existing open source models. We have plans on our roadmap to do post-training, and the data that's being fed into that will become even more of a question that, like I was saying before, when we do get to that stage. But for now, we've kind of, you know, have enterprise agreements with like who we're working with at the moment, and they know where their data is stored, they know where the data is going, they know where the data is leveraged for, and both parties obviously are in agreement with that and feel comfortable with like what's happening there. So that's what I'll say about that. But it's definitely some of the first questions you get as like an enterprise product is like, what's the data flow look like? Like, where does the data go from across the entire system? And then you have to draw really nice architecture diagrams, you know, kind of showing that.
Yeah.
So that's like part of it. And yeah, on the model training, like I said, nothing pre-trained right now. Post-training, yes. A bunch of different use cases. There's going to be some RL involved there as well. So yeah, that's like the answer to that question. And there was a third one that you mentioned. I kind of forgot. We've
also had, I know that I'm referencing sessions that you have not seen, Charles, but I do know we have some people who've been jumping in here and in the comments that have watched a couple of other sessions. And for those who have watched them, we've had conversations about open source versus proprietary models. And because Tudor brought up the question of models, if you had any thoughts around proprietary models versus open source models, and if that is something that you've experimented with throughout the development of GhostEye, and or you had any thoughts about that at all?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of open source. That's like part of my, it's like probably the biggest item in my 2026 like wish list is like what we're going to open source as part of our platform in the next year. I have some ideas there. It probably won't be models themselves. I guess my stance on this, closed source open source.
Do you leverage any open source models yourself at any? Do you use any at all?
Yeah,
or do you build on top of?
We build on top of, for the most part, for now, like open source models. And eventually when we get to post-training, fine-tuning our own models, it's probably going to be open source models as well. And I guess my stance on that is like, if you're an early stage company that's building a technical moat around, you have access to certain data that you've gathered through your platform, and you want to leverage that data to fine-tune a model that then becomes proprietary, and you don't want to open source that because that's part of your technical moat. That's like a train of thought that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that's like very valid to go that route. Otherwise, I'm a big proponent of open source. I think everyone's modern software stack is built on the shoulders of open source giants, so like it's just a way to give back and kind of recognize that like you're building on top of other people's work, and you just want to give back to the community. So I'm a big fan of that. For us, in terms of open source projects, it's going to be more maybe like light, if you will, versions of some of the agents that we're going to leverage. So the OSINT one that will kind of strip out some of the more proprietary stuff there and like release that. So there's projects that we're going to open source for sure.
Oh, that's really cool. Like that's very impressive that you as a very small company would even have the time, because it takes time and effort to share anything in open source from yourselves. I would say it does. So that's very, very impressive to obviously, that is very, very generous and thoughtful for the community.
Yeah, and I think there's some things like that where I told myself, being at BlackRock, and this is not a jab at BlackRock by any means, but like there's a lot of things that being a large corporation, you see the red tape, you see the yellow tape that's like everywhere, things you can and cannot do. And I think the tape is there for valid reason for the most part. But there's certain things that spending 6 years at BlackRock, I was like, okay, if I ever go start and do my own thing, here's what I'm for sure going to be pushing for and like not going to be doing, right? And I'd give you a couple other examples, like, for interviewing process, we don't use leak code, and I'm not a huge fan of like leak code for interviewing engineers. That's something that we use heavily at BlackRock,
that many companies do, right?
Yeah, companies. So that's something I told myself, if I do my own thing, I'm not going to do that. Similarly for open source, like it was actually, with Mike Bowen at BlackRock, it was actually fairly easy to be able to go through open source projects and like.
Love Mike. Mike's done a great thing for open source in general. So
yeah, and that was like kind of inspiring, learning from Mike like through that process. I was like, okay, if I ever go do my own thing, open source is going to be a big thing for us. Like I want us to be like a big player in open source and like be able to give back. So that's kind of where this is coming from. It's like, past experiences, you kind of get to learn. You get to see what you like and dislike, and how you, like, if you have your own thing, how you shape it, how you want it to be. And those are like things that were important for me. So yeah, for sure. Open source. Yeah.
I think that's really, I also like with the leak code thing, another thing I'm happy to talk about for so long. Like, I think I personally, so many companies have adopted those approaches to hiring. I think there's so many opportunities to approach it differently. And and that's a really interesting take as well, like about starting in a company is not just about the technology and what you're able to build, but also the culture, the processes, and the tone that you're now able to set. And that's really, really interesting perspective as well to bring. Like that is really, really interesting. Also, just want to call out, if people have questions they want to add, feel free to drop them in, because we only have a few minutes before we have to wrap this up. And I do want to ask Charles a couple of wrap-up questions that I really obviously always want to ask anyone who comes uninspired to build, and that is to really get into like what advice do you have for people who are building these AI-powered solutions? And the two key ones that I want to ask, I will tell them, and you will probably forget the second one. I'll ask one of them, you'll forget it. But the two ones I want to ask is, for someone who's building an AI-powered feature, UX can be tricky because chatbots, a bit boring at this point, right? But AI-powered features are important, but what do you need to think about from a UX perspective? And really, is the UX, in your case with GhostEye, it seems like the AI part is hidden far beneath the depths of where the features actually are. I'm guessing, because I'm feeling that if you are a user of it and you're setting up everything, you're not really seeing the AI part. The AI part is really the thing that is at work when you're being attacked. Well, that's what it sounded like to me. Yeah. And then what are you looking forward to in sort of 2026 and in the future? What do you feel are the early developments you are seeing right now in AI that you are looking forward to and you think either will transform the industry or will enable you in the work that you are doing? You can take your pick there.
Yeah, for sure. So to take on the first one, I'd say reliability is king or queen. Like that's like the number one thing when it comes to UX with AI powered features. And to your point, in our platform, there's a lot of stuff that is hidden underneath the hood, but there are a lot of workflows that could be initiated from the platform where it'll be taking off an agent that will do a bunch of stuff, and then it will keep you updated on what it's doing, and then eventually come back with results, right? And I think that bodes well with what I was saying with reliability. Like people, just like regular software, expect when they do certain things that it'll work like 100% of the time, right? And depending on like what your agentic workflow is and what kind of AI feature you're building, people will expect that every time they run your agent, it needs to come back with something useful, right? Like no one, especially with how people have gone used to using Gen AI, most people's experiences have been through like a chat GPT, depending if you're in technology or like, a builder or whatever, that might be different. But people expect like a level of service and level of reliability where like they're always going to get an answer that is, relevant to the question they ask. It's always going to come back. There's going to be no errors. There's hallucinations, etc. That's a whole different topic. But like, there's a big reliability aspect to it. And what I think this means is, and the advice I would have for people, and it's something I've kind of learned the hard way, and like, kind of a like not a panic, but I was pretty deep into, like during the YC batch, and like I was feeling pretty down about how some pieces of our platform were being built, and then someone came to speak, and it was like an all revealing like epiphany almost for me. And I'll give you what that story is, right? So I was building our open source intelligence agents, right? That I was mentioning, like gathering open source intelligence. The more we were inching towards releasing in production, the more I was realizing, okay, we can go out and seek information about this person, but then, I'll actually, let me take a step back. The way this agent was built is come up with a plan, delegate parts of your plan to like sub-agents, and each sub-agent will look at a person's specific angle of their life, right? And we'll try to gather specific information about that piece of their life. Sometimes you would run it against someone, and specific parts would like fail. Specific sub-agents would like not get any information and whatever. And I was kind of realizing running this, testing this, that like, it wasn't reliable. It was like working 100% of the time. It wasn't gathering a good intelligence profile about someone like 100% of the time, right? So what I ended up doing is you start kind of adding determinism in your agent workflows. Obviously, agents are non-deterministic systems. What that means, you put in input, and if you put in the same input, it's not guaranteed that you're gonna get the same output all the time, right? So what you kind of start doing is like, to add reliability, you'll like add layers of determinism, and what that means is you'll add just good old software engineering code that like will be deterministic, right? As part of your flow. And that could take like many different forms, right? It's like, if you allocate a task like a sub-agent, and you realize that like it's not doing the right tool call like in that sub-agent workflow, then maybe you want to deterministically like reduce that sub-agent so it has less room for error in like picking the wrong tool, right? So that's what that's like an example of what I call like adding back determinism into your workflow. And like during the batch, I was like working with this, and I was like adding layers and layers and layers of determinism. I was like, wait, I feel like this is becoming like less and less of an agent, like less and less AI.
Like it's less generative and more.
Yeah, there's like a lot of engineering scaffolding around it to like make it reliable. And I was like, am I? I almost like started doubting. I was like myself. I was like, am I doing this the right way? Like, is this? I feel like this is more Gen AI YOLO, like kind of just let the agent like do its thing and like not have a bunch of scaffolding there, right? And then, anyways, this whole story, we had a chat from Mike Knoop, who's or Nop, I forget how to say his last name, who's the co-founder of Zapier, that came to speak with us at YC, like as part of one of the batch events, right? And he was saying that they, Zapier, pretty huge platform to automate, workflows. And he was saying that they released 2 agentic products over the last year, and one that was very non-deterministic, very not a lot of engineering scaffolding, very like let it rip and like do whatever it wants. And the other agentic product was very much like what I described, like with a bunch of layers of determinisms added on top to help with like reliability. And basically his takeaway was that the one that had a bunch of layers of determinism added did much better with their clients. Like there was a lot more usage, it was a lot more well liked as a feature, etc. Versus the non-deterministic one was like barely used, like people were not really stoked about it, right? And I know, hearing it from someone like him who's like who
tried it, tested it, validated it,
like, happier, like it just made me feel better about like, okay, maybe I like took a deep breath. I was like, okay, maybe it's fine that I have all this scaffolding around the agent to help with reliability, right? So that, like, I guess the whole,
when you say reliability, do you also mean quality? Like this reliability creates quality?
Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand in respects, right? And so for me, the whole takeaway of this story, like you asked, like if I had one piece of advice to like AI builders, is like if you're building agentic workflows and you want to make them reliable for production, and you realize that to do so you need to add a bunch of engineering scaffolding, that's fine. Like that's how
you are not doing it wrong. You are not building agents. You are actually you're down the right path. You did not take a wrong turn.
Exactly.
That's a really nice thing, because I think sometimes as you say, we're doubting ourselves. Did we take a wrong turn somewhere? Are we in the wrong neighborhood now? Right? No, you're in the right neighborhood. You're fine.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is like, if you're in a position where whatever you're building gets better as like better models get released, and there's, that's like you're in a good place, because then you're able to peel off these like layers of determinism, the scaffolding that you added over time, and like making it more and more a true, Gen AI non-deterministic experience, right?
Or maybe your scaffolding can evolve as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Look different. That's a really good piece of advice. I like it. I've talked a lot about evals, and I think this goes hand in hand with evals. And like if you have good evals, you can also then evaluate your scaffolding alongside it. So that's really cool. And what are you excited about that is happening in the AI space? And how do you think that either affects the industry or yourself?
Yeah, so can I answer 2 things? There's a lot of exciting.
Yes, you can pick 2 things. It's all right. You don't have to pick just one.
The first one is like voice AI, I think is at its peak hype, but I think for valid reasons. I think there's a lot of applications. It's done tremendous strides in the last like year in terms of where we're at with that. And I just see a lot of winners in different categories that are focusing on like voice AI. I think that's like a very exciting topic. We obviously have voice AI agents as part of GhostEye to carry out our like phishing social engineering attacks. Obviously,
probably calling people and pretending.
Basically,
and
calling voices. And,
I'm scared of Ghost AI now that they're going to try. Like, I don't know. I don't trust people anymore.
And the second piece I'd say is I think on the visual modality, like Gen AI on the visual modality, I think there's going to be, and we even saw it with I think it was called Image Gen 1.5 that OpenAI just released. Obviously, like Sora, there's like a bunch of different providers now that do super cool stuff on like the visual modality for like generative things. And I don't look at it necessarily from like a creative angle. I look at it more in like automating back office work. I think there's going to be a lot of back office work that will be automatable because of that. And I'll give you an example of the scope of GhostEye. So for us, obviously, we carry out social engineering campaigns, we train employees, and it's like part of compliance, and companies need to do that. And there's a big reporting aspect to that, right? So think your CTO using the platform, or your security team, they're going to need to talk to different stakeholders, do a presentation about like, hey, here's how many social engineering attacks that cover these vectors we've carried out in the last like quarter. Here's how many people that failed. Here's a graph showing like what specific scenarios worked well, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a big like back office component that we're trying to automate too with the platform. And what I mean with like the visual modality of like the generative AI piece is, imagine we have a data lake and we need to transform this data in the data lake that has a bunch of events about what happened on a social engineering campaign into a very digestible memo.
Okay, like a one-pager.
Yeah, like a one-pager and stuff. And now these generative models, I think, can pretty well one shot go from like the raw data to like come up with like a one-page PDF or like even a small PowerPoint that outlines our security and awareness training program and like the results that we're able to get through like GhostEye. And to me, that's like almost like these last mile kind of back office pieces that we can automate that like make me really excited, because I think again it's like it goes back to the point of like if your product gets better when the models get better, you're usually in a pretty good position. That's like that's kind of an example of that, is like once we get to a place where we can like roll that out to production, I think there's going to be a lot of automation on back office work that like people won't have to do anymore.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Then I have a question for you before we just wrap it up and say thank you for everyone who joined us live. And that is, I have a question. So the agents, they go out, and now I think you're probably analysing all those people everywhere. But anyway, I'm getting worried about all my LinkedIn posts now. No, I post about quite nice things. But like those, I assume, are just like background sort of async agents. There's no one sitting there babysitting every agent, right? They're no one sitting there like, oh, what's that agent doing? Looking at Erica or Charles or, you know, anyone else. Like they don't need babysitting. There's not like live babysitting. They're going out doing their job and then they come back and they have looked things up, right?
Yeah.
And then they go fishing. Like that sounds funny. But yeah, they go attacking. So I have a thought that I think that 2026 is really going to be the more of making these like async, like sort of background agents more mainstream. You clearly seem to be already doing that. But I feel like a lot of us, when I say us, are, you know, still getting comfortable with the idea that, you know, AI can still like do things. And I sit there, if I do like, you know, agent mode on ChatGPT, I'm like really happy to sit and watch it, right?
Yeah.
You're like, open browser, you know, I ask it to go and look something up. And I hope for us all to be able to not just be 2x, but to be able to be 10x or 20x and really scale up. I was curious, especially since it seems like you do have experience with async agents that go off and do things. Do you think that it'll become more mainstream, that companies and people will leverage this more? And did you think it was really hard to build this kind of system?
Yeah, I do think it'll become more and more prevalent. The piece I think that is maybe going to be driving this, I guess, attention to mainstream workflows being automated. On the browser side, I think there's like a ton of like really cool stuff. Like if you think browser agents, if you think like what a person on a day-to-day basis does when like they log into their computer, a lot of like the workflows are through a browser, right? Like they'll go search for something, they'll go connect to some website, do whatever. I think browser agents are going to be a way that's going to become a mainstream way of doing things that are like async and let people kind of like from a prompt or from some kind of instructions, just like let the agent go do its thing and like have some browser workflows automated on a more, I guess, on a more regular basis. So I'd say that's like probably one. I agree with you first, and also I think on the browser side, that's going to be where a lot of like the people get used to like, you know, using async workflows like that. And then the second part you mentioned was
like, I'm just thinking like you built the system like in GhostEye that can, like engineers and other companies, like, do you think we will? I'm just wondering if we will see more companies being comfortable building this type of multi-agent systems that can operate asynchronously and do tasks.
Yeah, I think they will. I think there's a lot of pieces in the ecosystem that like need to mature. Like if you think of like, for example, agentic identity access management, right? Like if once you start going full on like these autonomous workflows, like how do you determine what permissions should the agent have, what kind of data it can read, what kind of data it can write, what kind of systems it can access. And I think there's solutions out there. Have they fully matured and like bloomed into like the go-to like couple winners that like people will do to add IAM like against their agents? I don't know yet. So I think the barrier between full adoption, to your point, and like more and more, in more and more enterprises, people like embracing it. I think it's going to come when all the pieces that are at play in this ecosystem are like really matured to people are able to like trust them really and like use them at scale. So I think that's yes to your point. Yes, I agree. It's only going to grow, exponentially growing in terms of like adoption, but I think there's still some maturing to do on like some of the pieces in the ecosystem, and people are going to get more and more trusting and comfortable as like these pieces mature is kind of my take. It's like very generic, no crazy.
Yeah, I think you've done something really cool though. I know that we talk about the impact of GhostEye and like what it can do for people, but I do think just hearing you talk about how you built these agents, they both gather data and then carry out attacks, like just in my mind is thinking about that there's a whole system of agentic operations that run without the human sitting next to every agent babysitting it. I think that is really impressive and really exciting, and actually it's very inspiring for all of us to think about what is possible to create and to build. So I'm really, really happy that you shared this story of your journey and GhostEye's journey, and also really happy that you pivoted and that you also had taken this leap and created this product. So for those who want to check out GhostEye, I'm just going to put up the QR code for the GhostEye link there, but I'm also going to be nice and put the actual link in the comments. So, because I know that it can be hard to just scan a QR code. I know that it's really boring to scan a QR code. I know. So I'm going to just show it here on the screen as well. It's a really simple URL. Just write ghosteye.ai and you will find it on the internet.
Shouts to Erica. We have a big launch coming up on February 2nd. It's going to be an entire product line called Beacon. I'm not going to do any spoilers or like reveal anything more, but if there's people listening that are like in the space that we sell into and whatever, we're planning like a big launch on Feb 2nd, one of our big product lines.
February 2nd, and basically if you like protecting your enterprise
and the people that are make your enterprise, like we're the people to do that. We'll also be. I know you wanted like a demo. I really wanted to do a demo.
Okay. You can come back on here someday and show a little. We love a little. I love a demo, but people often who like to tune in, they like seeing things. I've noticed that for those who come here regularly. I've noticed that you like seeing demos. So I also posting a link here, which is Charles' LinkedIn link. We all know that Charles needs to get one of them shorter links because look how long it is. Maybe I need to give Charles a LinkedIn tutorial on how to change his little loads of numbers there. But yeah,
we're gonna be in SF at the RSA conference,
cool.
conference in March, and we're gonna be doing a live demo on stage there. So there's gonna be a demo there for sure if it's not before that you get to see action. But otherwise any other security conference in the Northeast and like West Coast will probably be at most of them.
And if you want to try and do a social engineering attack on Charles for the RSA conference, you obviously can. He did outline that earlier in this conversation if you didn't see it at the beginning. Exactly. He has given you instructions on how to carry that out, so you can always try. Just want to call that out. And then if you would like to try some, obviously my name is Erica Hughberg. We'll wrap up here in a second. I work at Tetra, and if you want to try out building some AI powered features and just get started quickly, maybe not running your own models, you can try out the Tetrate AI router, which gives you access to a bunch of different models. You get $5 for free. You can access a bunch of different open source models, which is really fun. So you can try those out as well. And you can also access quite a few different MCP tools as well. So you can try building some agents. And if you do sign up via Goose, you get even more credits. So if you heard of Goose, you can, that's a open source solution from Block. So you can try that out. So showing you some of those things, you can try that out. But thank you so much, Charles, for coming. And as I said, the GhostEye.ai URL is not that hard to figure out how to type. You can hopefully figure it out. And as Charles said, there's a wonderful launch. Was it 2nd February?
Yeah,
that you can follow along.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone who stayed around, who listened. It's been amazing to have you all here. And thank you for staying so long to chat with me, Charles. I loved it. And thank you so much for sharing the story.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone that joined.
Thank you.
Take care.